So welcome to, this is Pivot Chat number 4. Thank you, Kendall, for joining me. I'm going to do as I usually do, I'm going to do just a quick intro of Kendall in the way that I want to, in the way that I know and love Kendall. And then Kendall, you can give yourself and you can introduce yourself and really more the work that you do as well. Okay. So Kendall and I met this summer. When I didn't know it, I know it now in hindsight, but when I was just about to pivot. And one of my first clues, I've talked a little bit about my story, and I'll be sharing more about my recent pivot because it's sort of it's what made me want to create this interview series, podcast, whatever you want to call it. And but I didn't know it at the time. What I did know was that the way that I was putting my marketing out into the world was not working for me. It was too burdensome on me. I did have a team. I do have a team, and they were instrumental in helping me to scale my business to the point where I had gotten it to by the summer. And yet I was still bearing the brunt of my copywriting and generating the majority of my content. And I knew it was time to get some help in that area. I had really sort of honestly prided myself on writing my own stuff for so long. And I loved it, but it was too much. And so I started interviewing copywriters, and I actually interviewed a bunch of people. And Kendall was one of the first people I spoke with, and one of the people that I've continued to maintain a relationship with. And what I realized in those conversations, not so much in the moment, but after the fact, was I don't even now know, I don't think I want them to write about the stuff that I would have wanted them to write about a few months ago. And so that's when I really realized it started with the burden, which is a very practical thing, right? And Kendall's a copywriter. She has a whole copywriting agency and marketing agency that she runs now, and they support. I'm a big believer in you don't need to do it all. The solopreneurship model is short term, and for me, it was a very practical start, but then what I realized was underneath was actually some questioning of what are my messages that I want to put out now? What is the content I want to put out into the world now? And in those conversations, I realized, oh shit, it's changing. So thank you, Kendall, for the conversation, because just whatever you do naturally and asking people questions about who they are, what they do, was really instrumental in me sort of processing through where I was. So Kendall is fantastic. The other thing that Kendall and I have in common and have really connected on is we're both rebels. We both have a little bit of an edge. We do not run our business. In fact, if somebody tells us how to run our business, we're probably going to run the other way and do it the other way just because somebody told us there was a right way to do business, do your life, whatever. And I find it interesting, Kendall, I changed the name of this Facebook group to include the word rebel around the time that you started your podcast, which is Rebels Get Revenue. Yep. And so I thought, we stay aligned. Great so time. Kendall is a great person to talk to. The name of her business is The Candid Collective, and they're all about doing things with candidly and kind. And that's what Kendall is. Kendall is so candid. And so that's why I have her on today, because not only is she a successful business owner, but she keeps it real. And she's gone through a bunch of pivots, and we're going to talk real talk today, because that's who you are. So what do you want to say about you, my dear?
What do I want to say about me? We run the Candid Collective. We're on a mission to create a world that's more candid and kind. We are a creative marketing agency, and we work primarily with online business owners. I'll say generally, probably some form of educator. You educate in something, probably some form of a content creator, whether that's a podcaster or a YouTuber. And you want to be known by your people as the best content creator on the internet in your industry. We do all kinds of writing. So it's interesting. Sometimes agencies, they'll say, we specialize in certain things. We truly can write it all. So we will write full website copy. We'll do email sequences. We do sales and conversion copy. We do content, captions, that kind of thing. So really any kind of writing project, we can back you up and support you in that. And I would say the things we're kind of most known for, it's kind of two things. The first thing I wrote it down on my phone the other day. was I'm Kendall Cherry, queen of hot takes, unpopular opinions, and mic drops. So in general, if you ever head over to my Instagram page, it's at Candid Collective Co. I just have a lot of hot takes about marketing. I think there's a lot of people doing it the wrong way, and I will talk about those things. And our clients tend to be pretty rebellious, kind of like Laura.
Mhm.
You know, they're rebellious and they're loud, and they want to have, you know, whatever it is they do, whatever industry that they're in, they want to be loud about it. And we also work with people, I'll say, people with a little bit of ex-copywriter PTSD, where they've probably had a copywriter, a social media manager, somebody that wrote for them at some point or another, and they just didn't feel like they got the value out of it. Most of the time, this looks like I hired somebody and I opened the doc that, you know, they wrote whatever the thing is, and it just blatantly didn't sound anything like me. That's the first one. Or I ended up, you know, I spent all this money on content and I ended up editing it all anyway. And so our kind of what we're known for is we'll have clients Slack us and be like, oh my God, I just read this and I got goosebumps because I thought I wrote it and I couldn't tell. Or we'll have clients, you know, their audience or their friends will read their emails and be like, did you write this one? Because it sounds like you wrote it. And we were the ones that wrote it. But really tapping into your voice, your inflections in your voice, and making sure that your kind of like spoken charisma shows up in your writing style without you having to touch it. So we're known, some people like to, you know, edit things and get their hands in there, but a lot of times we have people with like little to no edits, or it's just like exactly what they've had in their brain, but they've needed to brain dump it. So that's a little bit about what we do as far as like the services that we offer. And yeah, that's a little bit about me and about the company.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So, and I'm glad you said the piece about sounding like you, because, or sounding like the person, because that was what instantly drew me to you. And actually the way that you write is weirdly, or the way that you write, whatever it is, I don't know if you're putting out all the stuff that you're putting out, but it feels very much like me to begin with. So that was what attracted me to that. And I think it's because you speak candidly, because you write with, you know, regular person language and that type of thing. So yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about pivots because, right, that's why we're here. And I think one of the things that I really like about your story, and I know we can talk about any and all of your pivots today, but I know that, you know, you started out in entrepreneurship as a coach, and then you pivoted to a copywriter, and then you pivoted into actually running an agency of copywriters and marketing people. But I think one of the things that I've been interested in, that I think it makes your story different from at least the stories that we've told so far, is that you really haven't ultimately changed your big vision of like your what's the word, your co-working space and sort of your helping other entrepreneurs, right? That hasn't changed. And I want you to talk about your big vision and sort of the values around that. But what I think is so cool about your story and is helpful for other people is your big vision hasn't really changed, or it hasn't changed in a while. And yet when I asked you, do you want to come on here? And you're like, yeah, like, where do we even start? I have like all these pivots, right? So I think in my mission to normalize this experience, and everybody's experience is a little bit different, but to normalize that you don't have to like change your big vision to freaking have a pivot. And that in fact, the way that you're progressing towards your big vision is by pivoting in according to other people, smaller ways, right? But it doesn't take away from the deeply internal work that you're doing along the way to make the daily decisions, to stay, you know, grounded in your vision, and to be able to see that path forward, which that path forward is always going to be a little bit changing, right? You can maybe know generally where you want to go, but it doesn't mean that you have a detailed 10-year plan. And if you do, then sorry, it's going to be scrapped anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Do you want to talk first about sort of like what you're building?
Big thing
because
is,
you've already built a business and you're building something even bigger, which is really
So I would say one theme about me in general is I believe in what you could call the Trojan horse concept. Trojan horse concept is basically I don't even know history that well, but basically the idea is you come in with this Trojan horse. It looks like a horse, but on the inside, there's actually something else going on. And it's something I've done. I was getting my master's while I was working full time. I've done this time and time again where on the front end, it looks like something, but there's actually something else going on in the back end. So my brain is like highly, highly, highly strategic in a very almost freaky way. So my big vision, and this kind of beamed down into my head probably 2 years ago at this point. I had been an entrepreneur for a little over a year. The June 2020, like anti-racist stuff had started to happen. I'd seen and been experiencing entrepreneurship, and, I felt kind of enlightened after, doing the work and reading all of these books. And I looked at the online space and just looked at general entrepreneurship, even in Austin, Texas, where I live. There's a bunch of tech people here, but it's a lot of white cisgendered men. And I just started noticing like all of the people in the business space are typically white. And, even as a female founder, the resources are really hard to come by. But if you're a minority, they're even harder to come by. And so I had this vision. I was like walking on a beach in Texas, which our beaches are not that nice, but I was walking and, dreaming up like, okay, what am I doing here? Like, I don't think it's coaching. Like, what is the thing I want to really create in this world? And I've always been into education. I, at one point, like wanted to be a doctor of like urban education. And I'm just really passionate about empowering other people through education. I feel like it shouldn't matter what zip code you were born into or who your parents were, or, any of those things. Like there are just some, I think education should be like a human right. Don't know how the resources work for it, but that's just like my small philosophy there. And so what I started noticing is that in the online space and just in entrepreneurship in general, there's all these expectations around, okay, well, you need to go to business school, or there's this like, that's what you, to be an entrepreneur, quote unquote, in
the path.
Past, that's what you would do. But in reality, what I learned is like, as an entrepreneur, as I've experienced pivots, the only real teacher is experience. But the problem is you have to have capital. You have to have capital and security to make the mistakes that being an entrepreneur, that's just part of it. You're going to lose money. It's just part of the gig.
And you're going to fail. And I don't think failure is failure, but you're going to fail.
Totally. You're going to fail. You're going to fall on your face. You're going to start a business and you're going to scrap it. And that is just like growing your entrepreneurial chops. And what I started to realize was a few things where education wise, it was hard for, if you didn't have exposure to different experiences as an entrepreneur, you weren't going to move any traction. At the same time, I had also moved from Houston, Texas back to Austin, Texas, where I'm originally from, had no friends, had no way of connecting with people. And now I was an entrepreneur and I run an online business, which actually just means I work from my house all day. And I don't have a coffee shop or co-working space that I work from, and finding community was really, really hard for me. And so what I kind of dreamed up in my brain was this co-working space that on the front end, it's a cool place to work from. It's got all the amenities that you would have seen in a traditional corporate space. But on the back end, again, the Trojan horse concept. On the front end, it looks like a cool place to work from, meet friends, date, whatever. There's stuff happening there. On the back end, it actually doubles as an incubator for creative entrepreneurs who traditionally don't have access to, I'll say, educational opportunities, funding, et cetera. So for example, we would have a restaurant, a coffee shop in this concept. The concept itself is actually run and staffed by people who are in our paid apprenticeship program. They not only work at the coffee shop, so they get experience how to run a coffee shop. We teach them the financials, we teach them inventory, we teach them team management. We give them all of this leadership experience and educational experience in business without the risk of your only option being, I hope you secured enough capital and I hope it wasn't your life savings. And if you fuck it up, like, sucks. Like,
kids aren't eating. Yeah.
Your kids aren't eating or something else. And I'll say,
yeah,
I just realized that there was all this privilege in being able to take big risks like that, but also knowing and having this belief that I think some of the best business ideas that the world will ever see are trapped in the minds of people that don't have the resources to get them out there yet. So I kind of
100%.
yeah. So
Yes.
I came up with this idea of like, wouldn't it be cool if there was a place where people can work from, where they can connect with people, because we all want that after COVID, and it feels good. It's a good space where, you know, the people I naturally bring into my life and attract into my life, they're all like incredible people. They all look really different. They all sound really different. It's super diverse, but it's a place where you feel like home. But also it doubles as a way to fund and educate young or just fresh entrepreneurs that need the experience, need the exposure and mentorship to get their business off the ground. Because there's an element of failure that is going to happen in any business, but there is a level of support that early entrepreneurs, who I would say are not as privileged, they don't get access to. Things like therapy. Like, I want to have a therapist on staff. Every person in our apprenticeship gets therapy. Having those, like, basically building an alternative that outrivals an MBA is kind of the vision. But then also, again, it's a cool place to work from if you just want a nice cup of coffee and somewhere to hang out, or go on a food tour or whatever else. But this is kind of my vision for everything. And so that has stayed over the last 2 years. But as I pivoted and grown my team, I basically approach things as a beta. So for example, we have an agency, we staff copywriters and designers right now. These copywriters and designers, we actually teach them how to write and how to market. And they also get mentorship with me once a quarter to ask their big questions about, if they have a copywriting business, they can ask me anything about business, financials. I have sometimes that people are like, oh my God, I need to set client boundaries. What do I do? So there's a mentorship element. But, you know, I'm running an agency, but I'm actually Trojan horse beta testing the apprenticeship model and the current business model for what we'll build in 5 years, or, you know, whenever that happens. We don't know yet.
I love it. And I think that was actually I had gotten some recommendations of copywriters, and before I even ever reached out to you, I think I was just like following you on Instagram, and you did like a little story, an Instagram story about your setup, and I was like, I have to hire this chick, you know, even if she sucks at writing, right? Like, I have to bring these people on. And then of course, you know, you want both and you have both. But I think there's something, I'm so big. And actually I've been reaching out to several people recently to say, like, I'm looking for guidance around how to invest my dollars consciously. I don't just want to throw it willy-nilly into the stock market. No judgment if that's what you want to do, but I want my money to grow in a way that I feel like I'm supporting what also lines up with my values. And same with the people that I bring onto my team. And so the values that you've thrown into the smaller version, not that your business is small, it's actually like what, doubled or tripled this year, like the smaller version of your big vision, right? Like, but your values are streaming through all of that. You're already, you know, accomplishing a piece of the bigger vision behind that. And anyway, it's just another side note, like, it's another thing that drew me to you. And why I think that you're able to grow in the way that you have so quickly, because you just sort of live it. You just are, and you live your values. So that's just sort of an aside. But I think one of the things that I've noticed in my conversations with you is this, and I have it too, and I see it in my clients. It's like this, there's the blessing and the curse of being a visionary, and of being able to see bigger than what's in front of you. Like, because you can do what's in front of you, and you have to do what's in front of you. It's every day, right? And what I know about you is you love your work, and you love your team, and you love your business. And it's not that you're doing this so that you can wait and one day do that, right? It's like this, and this will obviously, in theory, it will create the capital and the opportunities to build that, right? The big vision. But I think one of the things you've mentioned before, and I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about, like, is the tension between having this big vision, right? That, like, you almost like received as a download on the beach. And I laughed that you're like, and it's not even a nice beach, but like you received, and we all have these moments of like, yes, but that doesn't mean that like tomorrow that is supposed to be, and so how do you manage and how do you hold the tension between the two things, the thing that you have and the thing that you haven't yet created, that both of which your heart is attached to, and I think you're meant to be doing?
Yeah, I think I struggled with this a lot when I was an earlier entrepreneur, where I felt like I would get these ideas and I'd be like, well, we have to build it tomorrow. Like we have a new idea and it has to be done now. And I noticed this as well with like in client interactions where they'll send something to us and I'm like, okay, must pick it up. And I realized that when I was doing that, I was feeling super burnt out. I was creating things that weren't aligned or that were rushed and like not really thought through. Or as the business has grown, you can't, when you're a solopreneur, you can be agile and pivot really fast. I could tomorrow be like, well, I'm going to be this thing and I'm going to just start going ham in the DMs and find people. And you can afford to be agile as your business grows. Not that you can't be agile, but you have to be a lot more strategic and you have to prioritize what it is that you want to be creating. So,
and you're speaking for a team, right? Like if you say yes to something that you should be putting a boundary around, then you're doing that not just to you, but to your team, right?
Yeah. I've had to fail through that one a lot, but I now have this like concept that I'll do where like for example, eventually want to paywall my podcast, and I have this like great ideas for like really hot take marketing newsletter kind of thing that is a premium newsletter. I would love to do it, but it's also the business brain in me is like, okay, it's more important to stabilize the business because cash flow has been a hot mess for some parts of the year. Let's stabilize it. Let's like really get good at this one thing, as boring as it is, which is so hard for me as a visionary.
I know.
Breathing. And the thing I have like a list, and it's basically at the top, it says permission to parking lot. And it's giving myself permission to put the idea in the parking lot. Doesn't mean it has to go away. Doesn't mean it, unworthy or it can't be done. It's just not in this season because other things are taking priority, which is okay. Like any business needs to do that. And you always, if you're a visionary, you're never going to run out of ideas. There's no lack of ideas there. And I know it feels that way because it's like your baby and you want to hold on to it, but you actually, you don't like ever really run out of ideas. Like that's not really a thing. And so being able to sniff out like, okay, what is worth my time? So sometimes I will follow my intuition on stuff. Like you and I were talking before this, and I had said, I changed our marketing messaging November 1st. I did that after I was about to assign all of my November content for my team to write. So all the same stuff we'd been doing, but I was like, well, it's been kind of slow here. And like, I just came back from this big trip and I feel like the messaging isn't really resonating. And it's like, people aren't really getting what we do. Like this needs to be tighter, but it's all in my head. Like, what do I do? So in that case, I chose not to parking lot it, even though it meant I decided to completely change our messaging and also take back writing all of our content for a month, which is
not
doesn't take me that long because it is like breathing for me, but that is other stuff I could have been working on.
Significant. It's your time and energy.
But in doing so, like in this instance, knowing that I shouldn't have parking lotted that idea or waited until the new year, like in doing that, I mean, I was telling you right before, we had the second day the new messaging came out, November 2nd, we already had an inquiry from someone who literally copy and pasted in their discovery call application. This was the bullet point that like sent me over the edge. I'm like, amazing, because that's in the new ideal client profile. But ended up having like within 2 weeks, 5 inquiries come through, which is, as a marketing expert, that is unheard of with new messaging. It just doesn't normally happen like that. It just doesn't. So I think it's kind of this idea of like being able to parking lot an idea and also trusting in your intuition and trusting the business sense, again, for me with changing the messaging, I was able to see, well, if I can change the messaging and sell, my Texan accent's coming out.
Bring it.
So one slot at the new price range of, the elevated amount that we'd be at, it would more than make up for the time that I sunk, quote unquote, doing it. So being able to strategically see what is worth my time in this season, is this aligned with what would move the business to the next era of what it looks like? And if it doesn't, parking lot it. And if it does, push for it, would be what I would say.
I love it. There's several nuggets in there for me. One is this piece that you talked about at the end around like, this is about self-trust, right? I think so much of the entrepreneurial journey is about self-trust, because somebody who is another business coach could like slap their business model into my business and I could just copy it and paste it and copy all their content and it's never gonna, like, it's not gonna take me where I want to go. I have to find my own way. I have had to spend the last 5 years finding my own way, learning from my failures, even though even if I did something that quote unquote somebody else would have done, it doesn't matter. It has to be aligned for me. It has to resonate with me. Everybody wants to tell me to do a group program, right? That's the ticket. That's how you grow your business. I played in that space and I enjoyed the pieces that I did. And I learned that I'm really way better at a one-on-one. I love it so much more. And that's really, I had to water myself down to create a group. And so I was like, nope, we're going to just be intensive about this and keep it.
That's okay.
But all that is to say, right, you have to learn. It's like you said, you have to keep experiencing things. You've got to give yourself the time and space to keep trusting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a pivot for most people is all about, is trusting yourself to go, you call it what'd you call it? Your parking lot list? I call it a back burner list. Yeah. And it's like a freaking whole notebook, right? But it's there. I know I won't forget about it. And it's also okay if I have like this brilliant idea 3 years ago and it never goes anywhere, because I think some of those brilliant ideas just keep your creativity flowing for the next one and the next one. And some are meant to go and some are not meant to go, but trusting yourself in that.
Yeah.
And the other nugget I'm getting from this too, that I've been just starting to talk about with people, because I scaled back this fall. Mm-hmm. I took some time away from my content, from marketing. I took some time away from growing my business in order to like land on the nuts and bolts of where we're going to go, because what I had been building towards for 1.5 years, I sort of like pivoted and changed my mind this summer. And so I love that you even mention that, and what you're actually talking about is not like, and neither of us are like pulling back from the perspective of, I'm going to just deal without making any money and it'll just be fine. I'm not talking about that. Both of us are still making money while we are pulling back. I called it scaling back, but like it can be shrinking your team. It can be taking time off. It can be what you're talking about, which is, I have a team that writes my content, but I'm going to write it this month to get that clarity and sort of like not right the ship because it was wrong, but like refresh where we need to be. Yeah. And that's completely worth my time. And I'm going to take this, sort of backward time, as opposed to just constantly trying to drive the business forward into growth. There are, to use your word, seasons where that's completely appropriate. And I think trusting yourself in those moments is not easy, because somebody on the outside is going to tell you like, that's not how you grow your business. That's not the right business decision. Like, oh, this girl doesn't get it, but you have to get yourself.
Yeah.
When you make those calls, that's how you grow. As you said, like you're ultimately setting yourself up to create more. And it's counterintuitive on the outside, right?
Yeah. My little rebellious heart here is that's not the way to grow your business. And I'm like, watch me. Like that's, exactly. That's my style. My style is just like anytime I choose not to listen to it, I'm usually right. It may take me a little bit of time, but like my COO has told me time and time again, where she'll be like, everything's fluctuating. What's going on? Like this is chaos. I'm like, trust me. And then a couple weeks later, she's like, I don't know how the fuck you just did that, but good job. I'm like,
I love
I
it.
know what the fuck I'm doing. Like,
I love it.
It feels like very unstable. Like I am a very, very aggressive risk taker. And I have done some like crazy shit and like crazy aggressive investing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Boy, when it works, like we level up on hyper speed. So I kind of know that about myself. I'm working at stabilizing that, but yeah, it's kind of being able to assess like and see on the other side of those big kind of hurdles or things that come through.
Mm-hmm. I love that. There's a thing a quote out there that's like, tell me I can't do something and I'll do it twice and take pictures. And like, I think that's totally us. And I don't know about you, but like, because I too, sometimes I know that it's like, when I say to myself, like, is this a bad idea? Like, not a bad idea. Is this like an irresponsible? That's the word I'll usually use. Like, is this an irresponsible decision? Like, would the MBA, by the book business owner agree with my decision? And a lot of times, oftentimes, like the true answer is, that's oftentimes when I know I'm onto something. That's when I know that I'm, like you said, I'll take a big risk, but it usually pays off. And if I fail, I fail. It's fine. I'll pick up I think we both have a risk
tolerance.
Thank you. And also a tolerance or even a comfort level that not a lot of people have with the unknown or uncertainty. I can live in that space. There's so I have a master's degree in organization development, which is all about like what happens individually all the way up to the societal level when we change as humans. And there's a beautiful metaphor about like when you're on the trapeze, when the trapeze artists are on the trapeze, right? They're going from one to the other. They don't like hold on to both, right? If they did, their arms would like pop out of their sockets, right? You have to let go of the first one. And then there's a moment before you grab the second one where they are suspended in air, not holding on to anything. And I think some of the best decisions I've made in my life have been allowing myself to stay in midair for however long that is, to be able to grab the right next trapeze. And I think not everybody has the tolerance and the stamina for that. And that's okay. You have to do it your own way. But I think also sometimes, I'm curious about you, sometimes I have to check myself in the reverse. Like, Laura, are you doing this because you're being a sassy rebel and you just want to prove everybody wrong? Or are you doing this because this is you trusting yourself and you're making a big change? You know what I mean?
Do I do that? I think I tried my best, and I have a coach that I work with, so she kind of gut checks me on those things. So usually if it comes up, she calls me out on it pretty fast.
She'll see it.
Yeah. So if you're listening, get you.
That's a good coach.
Get you a good sounding board that will push back on you. Or my COO has done it on me before as well. But even if you like, plug, hire Laura. But I think in general, even if you don't want to invest in something, and this could even be true in like your romantic relationship or your friendships, but have people around you that are not afraid to push back on you. Because you, as a visionary, you probably need it, and you're not going to do it. Let's be real. Like you're probably not. You're gonna get pissed and go and light the world on fire. But you need people that have a water hose, and they're gonna kind of bring you back down a little bit and bring you to reality, which is great. But even if it's not a coach or an OBM or a COO, like maybe it's just a friend or someone else in the business space that you trust that can be a sounding board for you to call you out or just like gut check you and make sure that you're in alignment and that it isn't, just ego talking or rebellious ego talking, I'll say. Yeah.
I love that. Very, very good point. It's something that I know about myself, and I sometimes will just like check and it's like I'll follow the intuition, but I'll do a little gut check onto, is there a practical, like, do I actually have the money to do the first part of this? Or, also double check the reality, right? And then I'll also do a double check. Am I just being a rebel, or is there, content to this?
Yeah.
Usually both of those things are taken care of when I just trust, but
totally.
It's a funny thing that I've noticed about myself. So, okay, that made me want to bring you to something else, and it's just escaped me. Hold on. Oh, it'll come back. So, oh, I know what it was. So I'm curious though, because you're so risk tolerant and able to do the big things, when have your pivots thrown you? When have you had moments of like, what's been the most scary for you? Because we're all, we all go through this. What's the hardest part for you? Because what's harder for you may not be the same for other people.
Like what's the hardest part of pivoting or
even making a big decision, right? Like, because I don't think, and I do want to just, let me back up really quick, because I think this is a really good conversation to have around the way that we're defining pivots. Like pivots are like Sarah in our last conversation was running 2 businesses, and she decided to close one and stay in the other, right? That's an obvious, like big, huge external and internal pivot. But I think so often with you, like you're still tracking, generally speaking, in the same direction. And yet you have had multiple pivots along the way. And I think sometimes a pivot is simply an internal decision. Like people may or may not have noticed. Obviously, the people who purchased, noticed the shift in your marketing, but people who've been following you for a long time, who are going to keep following you, or even your current clients, they may or may not notice your marketing changing, right? And so, or your messaging changing. And so that's more of a like day-to-day big decision. It's a pivot, right? I still think it's a pivot, and it's not the kind of pivot that we talk about much, but I think it's still a pivot. So I think
it definitely is, because I think like it comes down to being in like highest alignment with what I want to be creating. So especially like the messaging one's super interesting because it's I think I could kind of just tell where I was like, okay, well, things have felt really slow. Well, partially things feel slow because I'm kind of, half in, half out of the business because I was traveling for 7 weeks. So I was doing what needed to get done, but I was also relying on my team with messaging that felt stale. And to your point, like most people don't know and won't tell the level of intention and like combing through things with a fine tooth comb because I'm a marketing expert and that's what I do. But like most people aren't going to know that. And your people shouldn't know that things change. The only change should be, oh, now I need this, like now that should be the change. But so as far as like the pivoting part, the thing that's hardest for me is, what would I say is the hardest for a pivot? I guess the self-trust is interesting because there's a level of, I feel I am internally like really struggling. Like it's actually really, really hard. And it's like such a mindset game, but I'll have days where I feel like complete shit and I'm like, nothing's coming through. This feels horrible. I don't know if this is going to work. Like scarcity on, high alert and everything's there. And then there's just this moment when I just like sink into it. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm like, do what you want, universe. Like, this is where we're at. And I'm showing up in this way. And a lot of times for me, at least in particular, in a pivot or around the time of the messaging and stuff, I notice there's all of these like energetic leaks that are happening that either, and usually it's like, I need to set a new boundary or clients are expecting certain things or turnaround times or like payments or, whatever else is going on. Like there's other things outside of the pivot itself. Like it's the people-y part of managing the business where things have kind of like gotten out of control a little bit. And it's very interesting. Once I check back in with myself, I set the boundaries and it's usually really uncomfortable. And it's almost this, this just happened around the messaging. We had a client, they are our biggest client. They're fucking massive, but it's sometimes hard because they're not set up like a typical online service provider. So for example, with this client, when they pay us, they initiate the payments. That I don't send an invoice and they pay like on Honeybook or Dosado. They initiate from their end. It's all manual. So I need somebody on their end to literally push the button to get me paid. And this one time in October, they'd asked me to write an article. We didn't really set rate for it because they moved really fast. And so I kind of just like did it and was like, it's going to be fine. And then it ended up being a big issue to where as soon as after it happened, I was like, look, moving forward, we're talking like, what are the due dates? What are the expectations? What's the turnaround time? And to where they even said that like, it's terrifying to have a conversation like that because they're a huge percentage of our business. It's like probably 50 to 60% of our revenue. And so it's terrifying having to set boundaries like that and be like, well, shit, if they walk, I'm fucked. Like I literally tomorrow have to lay off everybody. But it's interesting. So this is a great story.
The stakes get higher, right? The stakes get higher. Other people are affected, right? That's the other thing I heard from you right now. It's like, it's not just the dollars, for sure. It's the dollars. It's a bigger loss, but then now your team is affected, right? It's that's a lot of pressure and people don't talk about that. I don't think enough in this space. It's just like, keep going and keep growing and keep doing, or once you reach X figures, you know, there are no problems. And no, now other people are relying on you in your model, right? Well,
and it's
keep going. Sorry.
It's interesting with this instance. So I set these boundaries around November 1st, like right before, terrified. Oh my God, they're going to fire me. You know, what the heck is going to happen? Because I set some boundaries and, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into that. But what's interesting is the next time, you know, I wrote an article this week. Usually they're like not on their game. It's a little delayed with the payout process, and I don't get to bill until the piece is completed. So usually, even if I speed to write the article because I, you know, want to get paid, I don't get paid until, you know, a week or two later. Usually, Monday of this week, basically wrote this article, amazing, no edits. It was great. They send the payment like the same day. Never happens like that. Let me tell you, it has never happened like that. And not only that, but the client is also located in Austin, and she was like, "Hey, would you be down to like co-write with me at some time?" This is like a multi-million-dollar person who is a major investor, has a fuckload of money, and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll co-write with you, and I am me and you are you with your 2 million followers on the internet, but yes, we can co-write together." Like those things come through when you set the boundaries in that season, to where not only is that operational side of the business cleaned up, energetically it's cleaned up, and right around the same time I've got all these other people like being in my worth and setting those boundaries. It also showing up with new client inquiries and also new old client interactions. Like it kind of makes the whole, it makes everything keep moving. So for me, pivot wise, I usually there's usually like the actual pivot, and there's definitely like energetic boundaries that need to be set, or things like that. And it's interesting, the moments you start doing, there's a membership that I'm in called To Be Magnetic, or TDM. They talk about all of this stuff a lot, and basically tests and the idea of the universe asking, okay, like, do you think you're worth like setting this boundary, even though it's terrifying, and getting what you need, or like making sure you're paid on time, or are you going to keep playing small? I'm like, well, I think I'm worth it, so we're gonna just go for it. And then it coming back in, you know, tenfold, not only in like how much better it feels. I felt seen and recognized by them. They loved the article I wrote. I got another article to write the next, you know, in my inbox that next day. Like just that kind of stuff that comes through when you set those kind of boundaries and when you pass those tests that are rooted in self-worth, I would say is, for me, is the hardest part of the pivot, but is also the thing that propels me forward.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. So true. And I think I have also seen, you know, almost the reverse of like, what's happening? Why is all of a sudden my clients aren't paying on time? And why all of it? Why am I like having the same problem with, you know, my partner and my teammate and my best friend? Like, what is oh, it's me, you know, but not in a judgmental way, but I think sometimes that's your clue to, because how we do one thing, or the energy that we have typically in one thing, is generally how we do the other stuff. Right. And so it is so many layers. Like, to use your horse example, like there's what's happening on the surface. Okay, I might be pivoting. And so that means layer, layer, layer. I need to set a boundary to honor that pivot so that we can do the thing, because my team has to do this and I have to do this and blah, blah, blah. But like, oftentimes it's not the external thing that trips you up, right? It's a layered, it's a layer somewhere in there where, to your point, like that's where the worthiness is all wrapped up. You know, otherwise no big deal. I'll keep playing big and it's fine. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's definitely like a mindset. It's like a self-worthy mindset side of things that I think some people skip over this work, and then they wonder like, why is this not working? I'm like, well, it's like the way you show up in one thing is the way you show up in everything. And it's definitely like the harder path. Like it's not fun, like combing through your shit, like that sucks. But when you do that, you end up healing stuff that needs to be healed, or setting boundaries and understanding and seeing the connection between like like for me, it feels like, oh, when I care for myself and I create stable and consistent things for myself, I create it for my team and I create it for my clients as well. Like everyone wins when we do that work, but it also requires me being comfortable with like getting curious and having the hard conversations with myself, like really seeing and reflecting on things for how they need to be.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, I'm a business coach, and I'm a business and a mindset coach, but like I help people in their business. And oftentimes people come to me with a more like practical businessy kind of problem. That's like how they come in the door. And 95% of my work and my conversations with my clients, it's all mindset, right? Like the business problem starts to solve itself, you know, and starts to be clear. What is our, you know, next offer or whatever starts to be clear or not. I mean, I'm way oversimplifying, but when you get into what's underneath,
totally.
And you're singing my tune completely. One last question for you. Okay. Are you aware, I've been asking almost everybody this, and I find there's interesting different answers. What are you aware of any of your tells? Or clues that a pivot is coming? So like if you were to look into the future at your next pivot, like what would you predict? Like, where is it going to show up first? Is it going to, like, how might you notice it before it comes, or before you notice it? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, for me,
it
comes in with procrastination or avoidance is like my answer. Has anyone else said this answer?
No, not exactly. No, actually, no. No, it's like a sister thing, but no. Yeah, no.
Yeah. So for me, like, for example, I kind of made the decision this morning when I was traveling through Europe, and like right before I left, we'd had someone come through and ask us to do branding and like create a logo and all the things. I was like, yes, this is going to be another way to make more revenue in the business. But as I was getting into it, I was learning like, how am I going to talk about, like, we also do branding on top of everything else. And I was learning, like, as we were getting through the beta projects, that I couldn't give my designer direction in a way that was actionable. And there was just like, we had really different values of like what like that was going to feel like. And so how it's going to work in a way where our clients were happy. And so it was just like, it was a good idea in theory. And I don't know if it was the wrong like match, or just like, I think in this season, like not really what I want to be doing. And so like, I just had this epiphany as I was traveling. I was kind of like, this feels not great. And then over the weekend, I had met with my coach this morning, but over the weekend, I had like the next round of deliverables that we needed to send. They were in my inbox on Friday. I didn't send them until Tuesday afternoon because I was avoiding it because I wasn't happy with the result, but I like had no way to like give direction to tell the designer, like, this is what needs to change, and feeling like I have a really good sense of when I can get things back on track and when things are a lost cause. I have a really good sense, and which is like really good like verbiage for pivots. I have a really
Yes.
good sense of like, okay, are we just off track, or are we like lost cause? This isn't gonna, like, it's just, it's unsalvageable. And I had this epiphany. I had a feeling like Sunday, I was like, I still didn't send that stuff. Like, I have it. Why did I
Like,
forget?
this is interesting. Yeah.
Part of it is like my Slack right now is like the notifications on it are all messed up, where it's like, if you read the message, the conversation goes away. So I have to like remember it right now. It's annoying. But on Sunday, I was like, that's weird. And then it got to be like yesterday afternoon, and I'd met with my coach this morning, and I was like, hey, can we talk about this? Like, this keeps happening, and I like don't feel like I like it. And so we kind of talked about it, and like, sure enough, like we've decided not even to finish the projects that we have. Like, we're actually going to refund people, because it's like not like, I don't think we can execute it in a way where it would feel good for me. And so we're just going to pull the plug, which, you know, that is certainly not what I expected. But, you know, again, the idea of, and like going back to kind of the first question of like, oh, you know, I have this vision, I have all these things I want to do. I'm also super comfortable with beta testing things. And I'm also super comfortable with like, I may like this today and it may not serve us in the season, or it may not work for now. Like, most of our early offers were betas of what we're doing now. And so I think like being comfortable, instead of thinking like, this is going to be the true thing that's going to, you know, push the business forward, being comfortable with like, this is a beta. We're going to test this out. We're going to see how this feels. If I'm avoiding or procrastinating anything in it, probably not the right fit. There are times when I procrastinate or things like that, and it's mostly because like I'm just tired. And I also, if you're into human design, I'm a projector, so I'm super efficient. So usually, like, I can tell like, oh, this is gonna, this is gonna be what, you know, pushes things back. But I have a pretty good sense of what is going to drain me, and what's not going to move, and like what's kind of a lost cause, or, you know, what's something that the procrastination is, you know, it's not a real red flag. It's kind of like more of an efficiency thing, where it's like, I don't really need to be on time. I probably should be, but it's, you know, it's not going to break the business. But it's stuff like that just happened, where I was like, oh, well, wasn't expecting that. And, you know, just kind of realizing like, I don't want, like, I think like energetically holding space for those projects that didn't feel good, like also opens me up for other things to take place.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, and I think in that sense, you're staying in that experimentation beta mode of, I said it would be okay if we stopped doing this, so it's okay if we stop doing this. It doesn't make it easy. But I think I always encourage my clients to experiment too. I'm experimenting with this podcast before it becomes a public podcast, right? Like to just get going and see how it goes and see how it feels before you jump into everything. A, it's efficient, to use your word, but B, it helps you with your creativity, and just keep going. Otherwise, I would have sat on this idea till, you know, January, February. And
when the creative process is messy and experimental, and anything.
Thank you.
Business is creative. Like,
business is creative. I can sing that to my end of days. Like, and we want to look at it, you know, in a more practical, like A plus B equals C way. And it's, you know, it's just not. It's life. You know, life isn't that way either. We really want it to be, but it's well, we want it to be from a predictive standpoint. But I also know that like entrepreneurs and creatives really prefer to be in a creative environment. It's just when it suits us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. Thank you for always being you. I can't wait to see what's next for the Candid Collective and for you. Keep doing you, keep being you. Maybe I'll have you back some other time.
Perfect. Yeah. Would love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You're, as always, aligned, so aligned. Our values are so aligned to the way that we do business in life. And I think the courage that you have had and shown in your business, and I think, you know, yes, it's because you also have, you know, an element of privilege, but also it's because, you know, you're just being you, and you're doing business, you know, in accordance with your human design. You're doing business in a way that works for you. And that's really what I'm all about too, and what I hope our audience hears from today's conversation, in addition to all the other good stuff. So
Yeah. Amazing. Well,
thank
thank you
you.
for having
And
me.
where can we find you? The Candid Collective, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram at Candid Collective Co. I have a podcast called Rebels Get Revenue. You can listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. Or if you're curious about some of the stuff we have going on, our website is offline, but we have a couple of links and stuff that you can take a look at candidcollective.co.
Perfect. And I will put all those links in the comments and on the website and YouTube and all the good places. So
Perfect.
they'll all be there. Okay.
All right.
Thank you
Well,
so
I will
much.
talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. I don't think we're still live on Facebook. Hold on. Guys, we'll see you next week with another pivot chat.